Hello and welcome to another Super 3 Boy Blender tutorial. Now today we're going to be going over Blender Fluids. Now before we get started, a little bit of self-promotion. Don't forget to go to forum.nistic.com where in the Blender 3D category or 3D graphics you can ask questions about Blender and get them answered pretty quickly. So that's a real neat place to check out if you have any questions or you just want to show your renders off to people. Also, I'm releasing a Blender DVD. It's going to be 2 to 3 hours long, $20, and it's on making a character in Blender. So if you like these tutorials, it's going to be way better. So just send me a message on YouTube or on Nistic if you're interested. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you're on YouTube so you don't miss any of the new cool tutorials coming out. So let's go ahead and get started on fluids in Blender. I have Blender opened up already down here, and we have our default cube, which we're actually going to use today. So first thing I'm going to do with the default cube selected is hit S and then 3 and then enter, and I decide that's a little too small, so we'll make it a bit bigger. Hit the S key, of course, and then we're going to hit Z key to go into wireframe mode, so everything will go a little bit quicker and we can see everything. Then I'm going to hit space, add mesh cube, hit tab to go out of edit mode into object mode, hit the S key, make it just a bit smaller, and there we go. So I'm going to select the outer cube here, and we're going to go down to the object button. You can also hit F7, then the physics button, and then fluid simulation enable. Now in our other tutorials we've gone over fields and deflections, particles, soft bodies, but now we finally get to fluid simulation. Now what we want to do here is click domain, and that's it for now. And so we're going to select the middle cube and go down here and enable, and then we're going to hit fluid. So I'm going to do a free rotate with Alt left mouse button and dragging, and you can see we have a big cube and then a small cube inside of it. So basically with the big cube out here, we made it a domain, or it's basically like the container which contains the fluid. So the bottom of the domain dictates as the floor, the top, the ceiling, and the sides, the walls, and then the fluid is basically the fluid that kind of just drops down from that particular position and can hit things like obstacles, inflows, outflows, or particles. It can interact with all those different things within the domain, and it can also hit the domain's ceilings and walls and floors and also interact with them. So we're just doing the domain and fluid for this tutorial. The other ones get a little bit more complex, but the first thing we're going to do here now, we're going to go back to the big cube and we're going to hit bake. And baking is basically processing, almost like rendering. It takes a little bit of a while depending on your computer. If you have a fast computer, obviously it's going to go very fast and everything's going to bake or quote-unquote process really fast. But if you have a slower computer, obviously it's going to take a bit of time for the fluid to interact with the environment and bake. So now we have the fluid. You can kind of see the fluid interacting frame by frame, hitting the floor, kind of dispersing and going away here. So I just hit the escape key because I didn't want to wait for it to uh, render out or bake till 250 frames, which is the default. So if I hit the right arrow key, I can see the animation of the little blob of water, I guess you could call it, hitting the domain and dispersing right there. So it hits it, disperses, and kind of evaporates away. So before we end this tutorial, I think we should put a little box around this that we can see it in our render a little bit better. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna move out a bunch of frames. I'm just hitting the right arrow till we get to what looks like a little box back here. And hit Shift D, that's duplicating. Then we're going to disable, or just click the enable button and it'll disable it, to basically have another cube here that will act as kind of a room or something that we can see that the fluid actually crashes into. And so we're going to go to edit mode, faces, and we're going to select these three faces in front here. And then we're going to go back into object mode. And so now, when we hit the left arrow, you can kind of see it look like it splashes into that bottom floor there. And if I was to hit the Z key, you can see the fluid on that floor there. And we can also make some improvements to this, like going into the editing button here and setting the smooth so it looks a little bit better than it did. And we want to make this solid. They were both selected at the same time, so they both went smooth. So before we end this tutorial, I'm going to just show you what it would look like. I'm going to go to the Scene tab and make the render 50% smaller than the default size of 800 by 600 here. Go up to Render, Render Current Frame, and let this render here. And if you haven't checked out the Making Glass tutorial yet, I suggest you do that, because you can kind of change the glass and make it kind of look more like water when it's kind of mushed up like this in a fluid. So if you haven't looked at that yet, I suggest you look up Super 3 Boys Making Glass tutorial and basically put that material on this fluid here, and it'll look more like water. So I hope you learned a little bit about fluids here, how to use them, and there's a lot more things you can do with fluids. This is just the basics of how to actually get a fluid to drop from a cube and hit the domain. But there's a lot more, and I suggest if you're already on YouTube, just search for Blender fluid animations and you'll see some cool stuff. So that's it for this tutorial. Have fun with fluids.